Thank you for that kind introduction, Professor Cox. I really appreciate it. I have a lot of love for the Humanities Center, and I really respect the work that all of you do to make it happen. I really miss my time as a center fellow and hope to return to the center to get some research and writing done. My talk today is on Black culture in Latin America. And I want to begin my talk by emphasizing that Black politics, like racial politics in Latin America, is a very difficult topic. One of the basic difficulties relates to incomplete information or data. And I want to give you some examples of that. Most countries in the region do not have complete demographic information on their national populations disaggregated by race, ethnicity, or color. As a result, basic questions relating to racial politics or Black politics cannot be answered with full confidence. For example, how many blacks, whites, mestizos, mulattoes, and indigenous people are in Brazil and the Spanish-speaking countries of the Caribbean, Central America, and South America? What is the socioeconomic situation of these groups in the region? How many members of each group or category are in the national or subnational legislatures of each country? What is the distribution of racial or ethnic, cultural, and political organizations? What are the political attitudes of whites compared to other racial and ethnic groups? As scholars, we do not have satisfactory answers to those basic questions. To the extent that these questions can be answered for specific countries, because some countries have more information, collect more data than others, the quality of the responses varies by country. And so my first point is to say that there remains a strong need to collect socioeconomic and political data by race, ethnicity, and color to increase our understanding of racial politics and Black politics in Latin America. The second point I'll make, and this is probably the main thesis or the main point of my talk, is that there has been an increase in Black political activity in Latin America over the last 30 years. And that's an important development. When a former professor of mine wrote an article surveying Black political activity in Latin America, he could come up with a few examples of Black political organizations, Black political groups, major Black political candidates. And so, since the late 70s, there has been an increase in Black political activity, and in part, that is a result of the transition of many countries in Latin America from authoritarian regimes or military dictatorships to civilian regimes and democratic regimes. So the political systems in Latin America have opened up. And in fact, Black groups have been a part of that transition to democracy. They've made demands, they've criticized their own countries, the economic, political, and cultural systems in place. And that's where I want to begin my more detailed analysis. In the last 30 years, Black political activists have condemned racism and racial inequality in Latin America in the strongest terms. They've done it repeatedly, relentlessly, and I should add, successfully. Throughout the region, governments and political elites have taken note of this criticism that Latin American countries are racist or white supremacists or elitists. And so politics is about conflict and contention. And so calling your country racist or calling your country discriminatory has been fighting words in Latin America. And so in the last 30 years, we have been engaged in this debate, whether there is racism in Latin America, and if there is, to what degree, what is its nature. Now, let me say, on the question of racial inequality, again, the problem is data or information. We don't have complete information. We know that Latin America is one of the most unequal regions in the world. The social structures and social pyramids are very skewed in the sense that the rich have a disproportionate amount of the wealth, the income, the goods that the society produces, and the poor have a very limited or reduced amount of the goods that societies produce. But again, that's a socioeconomic question. And we have data for that. But what about the racial or color or ethnic dimension of that distribution? There we have incomplete data. But the data we have confirms that Latin American countries in general are not only tremendously stratified socially, economically, but also racially. To the degree that scholars in the past, but also today, call many Latin American countries racial or color hierarchies or pigmentocracies, in which white Latin Americans or light-skinned Latin Americans tend to occupy the positions of power and influence in government and society, and indigenous people and black Latin Americans tend to be overrepresented among the poor and the marginalized. So there is a growing, or I would say, we're approaching a consensus that there is severe racial inequality in Latin America, and that it is negative for economic development and other, for the creation of a prosperous society. Now, the catch here is explaining this racial inequality that scholars and governments are increasingly acknowledging. Black activists and black groups argue that discrimination, racial discrimination, and racial prejudice contribute directly to the racial inequality that we witness, and that these are ongoing phenomena, which is to say that Latin Americans still today engage in discriminatory behavior against their darker fellow citizens. Now, that's not a consensus view in Latin America. The other side of that says that while racial inequality exists, it exists largely as a result of the unfortunate legacy of European colonialism and slavery. That's those 300, 400 years of racial oppression